I don't know how deep we're going to go into ceremonials.
We're gonna go deep, deep, deep. And listen, let's start over again, right? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are out there. A big warm welcome today. Today's very special broadcast of the Kev Baker Show. It's that special. We didn't start it once. We're gonna start it twice. I'm coming to you from the smart land of Glasgow, in the heartland of Scotland, and thanks to modern technology, at the speed of light, we're going all the way to Australia, and then we're going back up to Alaska. We go over to Norway, back to Nebraska, and we do that all thanks to Chris and Cherie Geo and Truth Frequency Radio Network. And I say today's going to be a very special broadcast because you've had one half of our very special lineup for today, and that is our good friend NeSe. Some call him Kevin, some call him NeSe. He goes by a bajillion names. So we have NeSe representing the Northern Hemisphere and the Anishinaabe people. And also joining the show at long last, now she can hear us, it's our good friend Luna from all the way down under to bring us the Southern Hemisphere First People perspective from the Aboriginal point of view. So this, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how many times this kind of thing's been done on a radio show, but we have got a connection, a very strong connection between the North and South Hemispheres, and it takes us a long, long way back to the information of our ancestors and elders. And Luna, I know when you've come on the show before, and it's great to see you again, and I bet it's even better now that you can hear me. I know when you've come on the show before, you like to start off by paying respect to our ancestors, and I think that'd be the perfect way to start off today, if you would like to do that for us.
Yeah, I can do that. G'day, everyone. Okay, to start off with love and respect, I'd like to acknowledge Creator, the Mother, the ancestors and the spirits and all the ancestors of all the lands that this voice is being heard in.
Awesome, awesome. And I'm really looking forward to today, Luna, because got you here, got Kevin here, and we've been talking about doing a show like this for a long time now. I only noticed today Kevin had reached out and said, Kev, you know, you don't have a guest, we can put it together. Luna's up for it, I'm up for it. We're here, we've got it together, and I hope you're looking forward to this half as much as I am, because I think we're going to get some really good conversation today, Luna. What do you think?
Yeah, I am, after the tech fit that I had.
You see, I guided you through. I'm like the tech help desk on the background. Kevin came in, he took over the mic. Great teamwork, you see?
Yeah, and NeSe sprung it on me. But that's all good. Everything works like that. Yeah, I'm really interested to match up things and get into it with the blessings.
Yeah. So, NeSe, I'm going to come to you first because you and Luna have spoken before. This isn't the first time you have spoken. And as somebody from the outside, one of my main interests is to find out the similarities, the connections between your culture and the culture of Luna's people. Has that been something that surprised you? Has that come to the surface in your communications with Luna, Kev?
Well, it's really remarkable because as I go through my journey and my experiences and my quest of knowledge, as I research all of these religions from around the world, when you go back into the simplification of it, you go back long enough, you will find that there's this basic similarity with all of these indigenous people around the world. And then having the opportunity to talk to Luna and to listen to her, it's the same as I have found before. And so it makes you ponder, back in the day, was it as difficult as it, well, now with technological advancements, we can travel around the world, except in the situation we're in right now. But did they also have the ability to travel around the world. I think they do. And I think they not only were able to travel physically around the world, but as I have been taught with my ancestors, that they can, for lack of a better term, spiritually travel around the world.
I'm just trying to get everything, try to find where we all are here on the cameras. There we are. I'd lost you there, Luna. And what's it been like for you? I mean, you've done a couple of shows with me now. I would imagine that's probably brought a lot of people into contact with you through the comments, through the Discord. What's it been like getting to know Kevin here when you've been talking with Kevin? What's really kind of stood out for you?
Well, first it's like talking to a cousin, like a family member. You just feel really comfortable, and it's like a relief. And the conversation flows easy. You don't have to explain. You can just say stuff. You don't have to explain it. That's the difference between a kin and someone else. You just feel comfortable, and you don't have to explain. You can say spiritual stuff. You can say something from your mob, and it's understood, and it makes the conversation really easy and brings the hearts together. And then you move up in the levels and start getting deeper into the woo.
No, that's where we're going. Now, since we've got the larger global kind of TFR audience today, if I take you back to when we first spoke, Luna, describe for the people out there, tell them what part of Australia you're from, break it down for them, the way the mobs and things like that,
Okay.
how it all works.
All right, well, I'll start off by telling you who I am. I'm Anne-Marie is my real name. I'm a Wiradjuri Gamilaroi woman, a Goanna snake woman, and I'm from East Coast tribe of Australia, a little bit inland. And we have kinships with the mobs next to us, and one of them is a ocean mob, and the other one is another inland mob. What can I say now? We have lots and lots of different mobs all over Australia. Even we have little different things, different languages, different ways of using our traditional stuff. But even though they are slightly different and they're predicted by the terrain that we're on, if it's dry, if it's wet, if it's sandy or treed. But when we come together, there's still this equal communication, and we use the blackfellow telegraph, or blackfellow telephone, I call it, to communicate. And in being Australia so vast, it's very important because it can take days and days and days just to walk somewhere, whereas using the other way, everyone's in sync and in time. So that's how we kind of...
No, that's pretty cool. How's that sound compared to when you guys get together over there, Kevin? How do the tribes blend? Do they mix well? Do they all come together? They've got a common purpose? Or is there animosity between any of these tribes? How does it work over there, Kev?
Well, of course, I get caught in the maybe it's ethnicity, or not ethnicity, I just forgot the word. But when it's your own individual group, ethnocentric. But the romanticism of my ancestors is, that noble savage, and plus there was all these other tribes that were around the continent also. But a lot of people don't understand that the American Sign Language is based upon the sign language that was utilized by the indigenous tribes for trading. So you had people that knew the trading signs were on the borders or the boundaries of different tribes. They would share things with each other, and they had a language to where they could communicate with each other. And there was not, I'm not saying it was totally not there at all, but there was different entities, lack for a better term, warring. There were skirmishes that did result, from one thing or another, because allegedly we're only human and we do ridiculous things, but it wasn't as regarded as we're taught today, that the indigenous people of North America were constantly warring against ourselves. And I think Luna can attest to this, that when these tribes started fighting with each other, it was usually because of European involvement, where they would fight us amongst each other, and then they would come in and reap the rewards.
Would you agree with that, Luna? Yeah.
Yeah, we're a little different here. Actually, when I went to Yarn Up last night, our fire night, I was talking to aunties and uncles there, and I was explaining we're a little bit different. I was sitting last night with mobs from someone from all over Australia, and we all come together in one area because they moved us around, and that's where we live. And I was explaining to them how we can all come together. We don't have friction like that. And when we had war, it was usually over stealing women, or someone broke tribal law, and there was actually grounds for war, so that didn't bleed into the innocence like we have today. So the war wasn't seen by the children and the women. It was in a certain place, and that energy was kept there, so it kept the land clean as well. We had strict laws, and they were taken care of. And if we went to visit another mob, say I had a message stick and I had to go to deliver a message, I'd get to the boundary of that mob and I'd actually just have to stay there, and telepathically they would know I was there, and I could stay there for up to a week until they felt like coming and get me. They'd feel out your energy, and if they felt that you needed to wait, they'd leave you waiting, or they'd come straight away and pick you up. But you'd wait at the boundary line with your message, and that's how we did it.
Wow.
So it was a little different.
Yeah, I mean, Kev, when that there as well, the kind of land set aside for battle, for that violence, for that negative energy. Any of that ring true where you've come from as well?
Well, that reminds me of the tale of the wampum belt, where tribes, where they would have like a treaty, and the treaty would be signified by a beaded belt. And when there were these issues of democracy or diplomacy between tribes, they would have to carry this wampum belt and bring it into the other tribe, because it's almost like going in with waving your white flag. I'm here on positive reasons, so am I allowed? But we had that same thing too, where we had like a bundle of twigs or a bundle of sticks. So when you sent a runner out, then the runner would go with this stick and a wampum if he's crossing boundaries of other tribes, and they would use this to share messages back and forth.
Very, very interesting. Now, one of our listeners was talking, Luna, about pre-colonial times and how it was very... Would it be safe to say it was kind of rare that you'd have mobs going to war with one another?
Yep.
Yeah.
Our survival here depended much on everyone cooperating. Even though we're different mobs, we had great respect for each other, and we understood how the land was, and we never liked to over farm, over hunt, or over pick anything. So we respected each other's mobs, and yeah, when it comes to war, it was a serious thing. We'd sort it out. All the important people would get called, and it would get sorted out. And probably, as you know, the ultimate thing is getting speared. If you've done the wrong thing, you get speared, and even that goes on. It's up to Creator, because what happens is you stand in front of the warriors and they're all got spears. You stand so far away and they all chuck them at you, and it's up to Creator whether one hits you and you die or not. And you could get wounded in the leg. None might not hit you at all, and that would be your punishment. That's like okay then. or
Well,
you might get killed straight away. You might get speared like a echidna and have
well,
them
that'd
all
be
sticking
me.
out.
That'd be me. The luck I've got, every single one of them's hitting me, Luna. But you mentioned creator there, and
Yeah.
when we've been talking about doing this show in the past, it was one thing I was really keen to kind of get both of you to talk to, and that was your cosmology, the origin stories, what the Aboriginal people say about where we come from, what creator is, and then after the break, probably we'll still be getting yours, Luna, but then get Kevin's take on what he was taught about creator, where we come from. So, Luna, what is the story of where did we come from when it comes to the Aboriginal people?
Okay. Well, our spark of life comes from Creator. Our body comes from the Mother. I've been wanting to tell you the story about Creator for a long time. It'll help you give an idea. I'll say it quickly. I'm
You
unprepared.
take your time. Yeah, you take your time. This is awesome.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So basically, the story goes: Creator is female, and she wanted to make the world, and she made the world, but then she realized that it had to be full of things. So she made Creator, Father Creator, as we know it, and charged him of making all the life, the animals, the trees, and us. So he went about doing that. He made the animals and the trees and that, and then he realized the animals were all arguing about the kangaroo wanted to be like the bird and fly, and the wombat wanted to be like the kangaroo and have tail, and they were all arguing, and he realized that wasn't good. So he went back to Mother Creator and said, like, what should we do? And she said, how about we take all of them and we'll make another being, which is us. So he did that. He took all a piece of all the animals and created us. And in doing that, we have the same thing. We want to be tall. If we're short, we want straight hair. If we've got curly hair and stuff like that. But the point of the whole story was that the male and female are balanced, and hence the mother and the father, the creator and the mother. So that balances you. But after that comes our growing intelligence, and that comes from a little help. Let's say that.
Now, is that one of these now? Is this one of these occasions, Luna, where you can't really go much further?
Yeah, kinda.
That's okay. That's okay. And just for the audience, I mean, we're we really need to appreciate here is that we're getting information that maybe many times hasn't been heard outside of some of the mobs that Luna's been talking with or that she's a part of. And similarly, when we talk to Kevin as well, we come on here, we do these talk shows, we do these podcasts, and we talk until the cows come home. But then you've got to really appreciate that there's some information that isn't widespread. It isn't thrown about out there on the internet for clickbait. It's held very close, done for a reason. And over the shows I've done with Luna and over the years with Kevin, I truly appreciate what we have been told. Because I already feel, Luna, that you've probably shared between you and Donnie more things. I know Jess was telling me this as well, that the stuff that you've talked about on there, some of it's never been heard before outside of Australia and outside of your kind of circles. So I totally get it. When we go places that you're not comfortable going, and don't you ever feel uncomfortable, just say, well, we're not going there, Kev. And we'll come back after the break. We'll match this up with what Kevin's been told about where we come from. We'll get into where we're going. And there is deep woo, lots of deep woo on the way right here as we reconnect the hemispheres on KBS. Hey, just another day on KBS, right? Welcome back, ladies. 1,417 shows in, and I still can't get my own intro music right. I'm telling you. That's what makes us the number one abnormal, paranormal, a whole heap of other things show in this world and the next as well. And today, it's a really special and important show. It's a show I've been waiting to do or been looking forward to doing for some time. It's going to be the first of a number of shows, I would imagine, because you can't talk about everything that we've got to cover today. With Luna from Australia and Kevin from over in America as we reconnect the hemispheres. We're all living through, and we're lucky to be witnessing the change of an age right now. Maybe some people will think the word lucky is going a bit too far because it's wild, it's hectic, it's chaotic. Things are a-changing, and we really are. We're on the cusp of a new age. Now, as every old age comes and goes, and we move into a new cycle, a new age, a new flavour of the tyranny, if you may. What sometimes happens is that that information, usually the oral, more indigenous type information, it gets lost in the transition. Sometimes deliberately it's wiped out, other times it just disappears. And I think it's more important than ever that we do our little part to keep the stories of the first peoples of Australia and America and all the other indigenous peoples around the world at the forefront of people's attention right now. I know there's a lot going on in the world right now, but if we are able to look back, there is so much we can learn about moving forward. So with that said, let me come to you now, Mr. NeSe. And we were hearing Luna and her breakdown of the Aboriginal origin type story myth there before the break. Talk to us about yours then, Kev. How do the Anishinaabe say everything got going?
Well, if I may digress and do a formal introduction as I've been taught through my ancestry, Buju Anin NeSe Indigenicas Anishinabe Minawa Kevin Richard Shore's Indigenicas Jaganashi Moog Makwanindunde Minawa Nindo Gitchida Ki Minawa Gawa Babi Gani Kagan Dun Jiba Minawa Moorhead Minnesota Nungu Minde Chi Mi Gwitch Gitchimanadu Gani Kana Pe Gish Mino Bima Diziwe Rian. So that is kind of a protocol that we have when we meet each other, that we share this thing, this experience with each other. When I started, I said, Bonjour. This is the way when you meet somebody for the first time, that's like the formal hello. And it gives an homage to the great teachers, Wayne Bushu and Nana Bushu. Now, before we went to the break, we were kind of talking a little bit about warfare. And a lot of people have heard about the Native Americans of North America, that they would put on war paint. I was taught that one of the reasons why the entities would put war paint on is because we as Indigenous people knew that every miraculous perfection of the unique individual has a specific place within their community, within their village. And to cause disruption of that by taking one key component out of the mechanism, you gunk up the whole machine. And for this reason, the Indigenous people here in North America, they would put war paint on because they did not want the Creator to recognize you in the event that you took a life. Because before we went to the point of taking a life, we had what were called coup sticks, where you would count coup. And it was basically a ornamented or a stick simply, and people add different bells and whistles to it for their own individuality. And for you to go up to another individual and type them or touch them with the coup stick is almost as bad as if you were to kill them. And that way, it was just kind of an honor thing and not a whole disruption of killing somebody. But with the stories of creation with the Anishinaabe people, we have kind of three different trains of thought. There are some elders that will say that we are the descendants of the Atlanteans. There is another group of descendants that say we have been here since the beginning. The third is when you break down the etymology of the word Anishinabe, it means when the species or the essence or the soul was lowered to Aki, Mother Earth, that we were basically brought down here to Mother Earth to live in a symbiotic or harmonious culture with our surroundings.
And now I'm muted up and I'm forgetting to unmute.
Can I add to what NeSe said there?
Luna, listen, this is for you and Kevin today. I might have my name on the door, but I'm here to listen to you guys talking about what you want to get out there. So take it away.
Okay, we'll talk a bit about the paint and our discipline. First, our discipline, women's discipline, was if a woman argued with me and I was minding my own business, and she came up and harassed me and started yelling, the whole mob will get together. We both get a stick each. She has to stand there with her head bowed down like that, and I get first hit because she came over to me and started arguing. Now, I get first hit and I want to hit her good because after that hit, she gets to hit me after that, and that's the end of the argument. So that's woman's discipline. Men's discipline, a little different. This is why I wanted Donnie here, because he can fill in parts I can't. They have similar ways.
That's one of the things that's really shocked, that's the wrong word, but surprised me getting to know you and Donnie, the real distinction between men's business and women's business. It's like two totally separate things, and sometimes never the two shall meet. That's been one of the more surprising aspects of things, Luna, when getting to know you and Donnie and about the Aboriginal people. And then before I hand it back to you, Kevin, is this something that translates? Is this something that carries on over to the Anishinaabe tribes, the Native Americans? There's this real separation between the warriors and the women.
Well, there was a separation when it was considered where and what women were doing for the betterment of the tribe, and where and what men did for the betterment of the tribe. But there was the opportunity when a individual went through their maturity rites or rituals that during their first vision quest, if coming out of this vision quest, they said, hey, I'm supposed to, and they're a man, and they're like, hey, I'm supposed to be doing the work considered women's work. Or even if a woman went through their vision quest and they said, hey, I'm supposed to be a hunter also. And it was accepted. It was like, okay, because every entity is its own entity. And the Anishinaabe, when we use our verbs, like an example, the word bimibato means to run. It doesn't denote a man running or a woman running. It just denotes something running. And the only way that you would clarify that is if you would say inini for a man or ikwe for a woman. And so we weren't matriarchal or patriarchal. We were just equalist.
Yeah, we're equal too, even though there's a big straight line between men and women, but we stand side by side because what we have is men's business, women's business, and community business, and that's when we bring the children and the whole community together, the old ones mixed with the young ones.
So, Luna, you were talking about the paint before I rudely interrupted you. Yeah,
Yeah, I've got
yeah.
super stuff.
See, I'm bad at jumping in, so I'll let you get back into that.
Okay. That's how it goes. So our ochre, what we do, we don't actually have like war paint. So you've got each mob has our own distinct paint, and I was going to paint up, but I was feeling a bit shy. Our mob paint is just around the face here, and the men are a little different. So you've got your mob's paint. Some of them are red ochre, and they all red ochre up. Others are white ochre, different patterns. It depends where you come from, and that's how we can identify each other. So you got that ochre up. Then you've got, when you get initiated in that, they give you like your own personal thing, and it's usually a story or something sacred, and it's passed on to you, and it's shown in that painting. And for the men and women, again, we get painted different. The women get painted across here, and down there, obviously, and the men get painted all over practically. So they're the differences. Then we've got when you do spiritual ceremony for yourself and that, and you use ochre in that, and you paint up different again. So we have 3 different ways of painting up. And when the men went to war, we wore our mob's paint, so we knew which mob was which. We didn't actually have paint for war, so that was different there. And our ochre is very sacred. I think if you've tuned into a show before, I told you the story about the giant kangaroos. The creator told us to put the white ochre on so we're invisible and we could sneak through without them stamping on us. Yeah, and the ochre stories change around the country depending on what ochre is accessible, because down south they don't have red ochre, and they get it from a blood tree, and the bark on the tree is red, and it gives them red ochre, but only the men are allowed to use it because it's the blood off the tree. So it all changes a little bit, but basically we have our mob's ochre, our personal ochre, whereas you grow and you get that given to you, and then our personal ceremonial stuff, which is private, and you just paint up when you're in the bush doing your own thing. So, and what else? Oh yeah, the men and women's business. There's a mob in the desert, and one of my friends come from that mob, and she lives here in Sydney. And she had a son and a daughter. Now in her mob, when she goes home, the men are not allowed to look at the women. You're not allowed to talk to the men, you're not allowed to look at them, everything's totally separated. And when she has a son and daughter and goes home, they get confused because they're not allowed to talk to each other, even though they're brothers and sisters. And out there, the laws are really, really strict, even more so than anywhere else. So, and that's how it goes. And the land's harsher. Where the land's harsher, the laws are stricter.
Wow. So, Kev, how does that sound to you? I mean, what does that make you think of when you hear Luna talking about that?
Well, the first story it makes me think of is that one law for sure, and I agree with, is that when you as a man married a woman, or we call it a weed de gay ceremony because it's not a proclamation of ownership, sorry, women, but it's called a spirit binding, where you tie the spirits together. But once a man and a woman are bounded, a man is not allowed to talk to the woman's mother. So you don't have to deal with the mother-in-law.
Yeah, we got that. Mother-in-law law. Remember?
And if you wanted to, if there was a message that needed to be communicated between the husband and the mother-in-law, it has to go through the daughter or someone else. They're just not to communicate.
What is wrong with mother-in-laws, though? There's something about them. They're like a strange... Something happens when somebody becomes... Do you, like, wake up different the next morning, Luna? Do you know that you send fear into the heart of one person? You know, the minute you're a mother-in-law. It's strange, isn't it?
I try to be kind.
I think it might have something to do with nobody can be good enough for our children as a parent.
That's probably a lot to do with it when you think about it, yeah.
Because
there
all you
is-
want is the best for your child, and we have to bite our tongue when people fall in love with who they fall in love with.
Well, this is going to sound really strange, but maybe not. But Luna, how does that happen? Say you're over there, you're in your mob. Is it as simple as falling in love with somebody and getting married? Is there some kind
No.
of nuts? Talk to us
No,
about that then.
traditionally,
Yeah.
These days, we're like everyone else, right? But we'll actually know, because you've got to know who your mob is and who your relatives are, because we all got taken away and mixed up, and you could accidentally marry one of your relatives. So you need to know who you are. Otherwise, marry someone from a different culture. Traditionally, there were certain mobs that you were allowed to marry into, and if you married outside those mobs, you and that person that you were with would be banished. And it's all to do to make sure that there's no interbreeding, because we have the totems, skins, and soils all have to match up. And that's our kinship connection, which is very, very difficult. And I'm not going to explain it here, but basically, all around Australia, you had your neighbouring mobs, and they were 3 usually. And you would marry out of one of those 2 under strict laws. And our weddings were a little different around Australia. My mob wedding is when you get your partner, your tribal husband. Before the wedding, you don't see them for about 6 weeks, I think it is. It might be a bit longer. And you stay with your mum. And then on the day of the wedding, everybody's there. It's an open air thing, obviously. And at that moment, when you first lay eyes on each other, you get the chance again to go, oh, do I really want to marry you? Because you haven't seen them for so long. And if you do, the wedding goes ahead. If you don't, no wedding. We do have, how can I put it? What's that word? Where I'll get my daughter to marry your son from birth. We do have that. But when they get older, if they don't want to marry, we don't make them, even though we've already matched them up. So we don't make people do these things. They can choose to marry someone else. I've got a couple of friends, they got tribal husbands, but they actually don't live with those husbands. They have other people, but that tribal husband is always there for them whenever they want to go back. So, it's pretty all right.
No, pretty cool. Pretty cool. So, Kevin, how does it work over there then? For a tribal wedding? Just like anywhere else, you just fall in love, or is there a procedure to it?
Well, we have gatherings that occur throughout the cycle of the Earth going around the sun. Prominently in the middle of the summer is our biggest gathering. They're called a powwow in today's terms. And when they would gather at these powwows, then that is when we rekindle friendships, where we visit each other, relatives and that. But our clan, or we call it a Nindu Dane or Dodane, where it is signified by animals. And one of the universal laws is that you do not marry somebody who's in your same clan. Like I am of the Makwa or the Bear clan. So I am not to marry another Bear clan. And this was one way of keeping the bloodlines pure and not mixing it, or not, well, I guess you can't call it keeping it pure, but keeping it diluted in order for there not to have the challenges that occur from interfamily marriages.
Yeah, I remember when we spoke one time before as well, Luna. It speaks to an ancient knowledge of genetics, that you don't get certain mobs intermingling with other mobs and things like that. And this ancient type of knowledge, the Aboriginal people, where do they say that all this knowledge that's been amassed over the ages, where does it come from? On the face of it, you're looking at people that live on the land, and yet, as I've often said, the knowledge, proper knowledge that these people have about the way everything works, living in harmony with things, it's mind blowing. But where does that knowledge get amassed from? Does it just build up over time? What are you told about that kind of thing, Luna?
Well, as you know, we're a verbal mob, and most of our knowledge gets passed on, yarning up like this. As you grow, as a child, you get taught listening to the stories and all that. And all right, I know what you want to ask. Yes, the visitors help us.
No. Hey, no. I wasn't going there. But I mean,
well,
if you're
ultimately, that's it. Creator helps us, and you got to remember we can hear the plants and all that. Okay, we're connected, so we can hear the animals and the plants. They'll tell us where medicine, where poison, like they tell you that, because we're connected in. When you're connected in, you can hear all that. We have a saying here, we call some of us concrete blacks because they're born in the city, and they have that slight connection, but they're not totally enveloped in it. And then you've got those that are, and those that are, they can hear, the land speaks to them.
So Luna, today when I was doing the stream, Mark, I think the person's name was saying that we can already communicate telepathically, call it the bush telegraph, call it these things. Now, let me ask you then, you take somebody like me, somebody that's not been brought up with that connection to the land. Can anyone activate? Can anyone plug in, or do you have to have some kind of like experience, been brought up with it? How does that work?
Okay, well, all right, we'll start basic. Basically, everyone's created a major with it in you, and once upon a time, everyone was activated, and then things changed. The things that changed that activation, lifestyle, what we eat and drink, what we think. Now we've got computers, so our mind isn't in that realm anymore. So you're not paying attention to it. I see it happen in people that say they're not spiritual, but I can see these little connections. They're most of the time not even aware of what's going on. And someone that is will come in and say, hey, did you see that? And when they see it, they go, oh, yeah. And then they'll tell you, I've always had... I could always tell who was on the phone, or I always knew when someone was coming over, and they'll tell you something little tiny like that, and that's their spirit telling you, yeah, I'm here, but all this stuff is covering me over.
So when you say spirit, when you say spirit, does that mean a general energy, or do you have your individual spirits?
Well, I say spirit as in general energy.
Yeah.
When I say spirit, I'm talking about all the spirits that come and assist us. Yeah. So that's for animals, plants, and the outer body spirits who you have to, discern. You got to use discernment. But I'll tell you, when an old black fella or old lady comes to visit you in spirit, you know it, because they look similar to what's behind me, and they just lean over or stand there, and they're there, and you know that when they come, it's very important, and you listen to what they say.
So is that like an ancestral type spirit then?
Yes. Yeah, they're our ancestors coming through, telling us and guiding us and helping us with the old knowledge, because it's still there. They're still around, so it's still there if we listen. In our community today, we're just at the point where we're reawakening everybody. And the fire nights that we have on Monday nights is about culture. It's about reawakening our spirit, because we're all inherently spiritual people. But everyone all over the world is, because all our tribal people were like that. The Celts and, the Asian people, you go back into our tribal history, we were all connected, and we all had the telephone. And it's just over time and the way we live that has covered it up. To reawaken it, just become aware. Sorry about that.
That was awesome. That was really good timing. Some background music there. I liked it, Luna.
You don't realise, Kev, but you already got it, right?
See, I don't know. See, I absolutely.
You just don't know it's working, right?
I agree that I probably have something, but again, like you said, totally too much going on in my head to recognise it.
Is exactly, because you gotta slow down, take time, take a deep breath, and actually look around and feel and see what's happening. If you did that, if you were with me and we hung out for a while, I'd just bring it up and show you, and you'd go, "Oh, I know what you're talking about." Then you'd know what to look for. But
Yeah, yeah.
you just got to hang out with someone that knows. And at the moment, it's time to reawaken all that. That's what they want to squash. Everything that's at play now is to disconnect us from that connection completely, because then we lost our ownership over ourselves.
You know, funny you should say that. I had very good conversation at the weekend with a very good friend, and they were kind of saying something similar about with everything going on in the world right now. What if there's something more to it, almost along these energetic lines that you're talking about there? That's why in recent days and weeks I've been kind of blown away by all the astronomical, astrological alignments, eclipses, everything that's lining up and taking place at this exact time in history as well. And when we come back on the other side, I'm going to get Kevin to speak to us about whether or not the Anishinaabe have this equivalent of what Luna calls the bush telegraph. We're all psychic, folks. We just need to know how to listen, how to switch it on, and how to activate it. We'll be back on the other side with more from Luna and NeSe. Don't go anywhere. You know, these are the types of conversations that New World Order, that 0.001% of douche canoes that rule the planet, these are the conversations that they fear the most. Because this is the type of information that they've tried to quash over the ages. They've tried to burn it. They've tried to get rid of it. They've tried to wipe out the very people who could bring us these stories. They fear this type of information, and that's why it's been occulted away in their mystery schools, locked away in underneath the Vatican. You think about all the stuff the Spaniards done, all of the information that they robbed, burned, got rid of. That's why it's more important than ever, especially at the end of one age going into another, I think anyway, that we reconnect the hemispheres. We hear about our brains all the time. Oh, I'm left brain. No, I'm right brain. But you find that if you can get both those hemispheres working together, oh boy, that computing power just shot you straight into the astral plane. Well, what happens when you take the information from the northern hemisphere and you reconnect it after the scattering of the languages and all the information's been lost? You reconnect it with the information that comes from arguably the oldest humans on the planet. And if you don't believe me, I urge you to check out Bruce Fenton, his work. Absolutely amazing. Myself and Jess, Mammoth Hunter, we done 2 shows with Bruce. We've still got another show in the works that needs to be done with him. He makes a compelling case for not out of Africa, but into Africa. What if people didn't move the way we were told? What if they came from Australia first? And I'm saying what if. I honestly do believe that. Can I prove it? No. I tell you what, I've got the people here, I've got the information we need that might not go a long way to proving it, but it gets us closer to that information that I was talking about that they don't want us to hear. They don't want us to know that we've got a set yourself free button in our own heads where we can reconnect with people, not be surveilled, not have to go through their technology, their networks, their systems. Cut out the middleman. Head to head, my mind to your mind. It's like something in a sci-fi movie, right? But can you imagine if we did have that capability? Well, newsflash, we do. Some people are doing it all the time. People like Luna and Donnie, they just talk about it as if it's like picking up the phone and dialing one of your friends down the street, because that's how normal and natural it is to them. It's just what we do. And it doesn't even need to be just humans. We're talking animals, we're talking plants, we're talking the very planet all around us. All of it's got its own unique IP address, if you want to think of it that way. And you hold the keys to all of that communications. So we've got Luna from Down Under. We have got Kevin from the Anishinaabe. And together we're reconnecting the hemispheres. And before the break, we were talking about telepathy, these kind of things. And Kevin, I'm going to come to you before we get into what's going to be amazing stories from Luna about dingoes and animals. And I've got another story of Luna's that I really want her to tell the audience before we go away today, because when we've done the shows with Luna and Donnie and Jess and Ken before, we done it on YouTube, and we done it at a very Australian friendly time. It was nighttime Australia. Now we've got the bigger global audience here, thanks to TFR. And there's definitely one story in particular I've got in mind, but we'll get to that. Kevin, I'm coming to you, man. Do you have your version of the Bush Telegraph? Are you entangled with members in your tribe?
Well, if we think about it in today's technology, where we have frequencies, the Truth Frequency Network, we have radios where they transmit an electromagnetic field or wave, and through transmission and receiving, they get picked up and distributed. Well, if you think of the human, and I use that term loosely, when you think of our own entity, itself is made of a frequency. Like we were talking earlier, the difference of animals and people, where each individual animal has its own unique frequency, yet all of the rabbits have their own collective frequency. Same with the trees. Each separate tree is its own entity, but the group of trees. And this goes the same with us silly humans, where we have our collective frequency and we have our unique individual frequency. But where does this frequency come from when our mothers and fathers make this incredible Big Bang occurrence happening? And lo and behold, there you are. Your frequency is of that frequency also. So in our genetic composition is a frequency that has been passed down from our grandfathers and great-grandfathers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers, to where we have that ability, when we recognize it and utilize exercising those abilities, to reach back into the generations and call upon them for guidance, just as they, from their realm, are able to come and visit us in order to give us guidance, sometimes warranted and unwarranted. And like Luna was talking, when you have elders coming at you and speaking to you, it's best to pay attention.
Absolutely.
Sure is.
But I wanted to share one experience that I enjoyed talking to Luna, because sometimes you hear individuals where they're like, oh, I can talk to animals, and then I'll make a comment like, oh, that dog, it speaks English. And one thing that I have a connection with the crows, and when I hear the crows go off, right away I'll just say "Bujuandeg," just to give acknowledgement of the crow. And there's times where people have witnessed where I start talking to a crow, because it'll make itself known if it's wanting to share something to me. But it's not by like hearing it caw and knowing it as like a human word like English. And so I will ask questions of the crow. And my daughters have witnessed it, and it's remarkable to see them now when they hear birds and animals, where they will acknowledge the animal themselves and see if they can find that. Because you will, if you look, find that you have these abilities. So when a crow will caw, and I'll ask it, are you here to give me a message? Are you here to share with me? And then they'll start cawing more or less. But there's been times when I get a feeling of the crow's message more so than just kind of a caw. And there's been a couple times where I've reached out to talk to a crow, and literally it feels like the crow comes back to me and says, who the heck do you think you are talking to me? I'm a crow. You're a ridiculous human. Don't talk to me.
It's on a completely different level to us as the crows. I'll never be able to look at a crow the same again. Now, Kev, before I come to Luna then, when we pass, when we leave this plane, when we leave this spacesuit, as I call it, can we come back as a crow? Can we come back as the animals?
That I don't know. I don't know, but one thing that I do know, that the relationships that some of my people have had with animals and birds, that they have been given the opportunity to walk in or piggyback on the soul of that animal. I think we talked about this once with Scotty about when the earlier frontiersmen met the indigenous people here. They're like, how do you have such intricate maps? And one of the explanations were, you know, so-and-so has a relationship with the eagle or the hawk, and he will go inside the eagle or the hawk so they can see from above, and then that gives them the ability to make such intricacies in maps. And I've heard the same story with other animals too, where each individual will have that connection. You know, and some people might call this their spirit animal, you know, because people know when they have an affinity to a certain animal. And I would always say, try to build that relationship, you know, because there's something every entity has to teach us, but are we willing to set aside our egos and accept it? Like with the crow and the animals, I think the animals are far more superior than us because they live to live. We don't live that way. We live in order to pay the bills and to pay the rent and to get that latest iPhone or the latest video game, where animals don't do the same thing. And
Luna,
that makes them superior in my eyes.
no, I hear what you're saying there. So, Luna, how does that tie in with your kind of information? I remember we spoke before about, now, you'll need to correct me maybe, but were you telling me that you can either come back as animals, or is it that spirits can enter the animals? How does that play again, Luna?
Both. We have some of the old fellas, they can come back and occupy a dog body or a dingo body and look after the mob, and we recognise that. They can come back in a kangaroo or something like that, and we recognise it. And if you hunt and kill one of those animals that has a clever fella in it, you get in big trouble. So you've got to learn to decipher, is that just a normal animal, or is that spirit animal got a spirit of someone important in it? The other thing, our totems, we're connected that way. So depending on your totem, that animal, you can come back obviously as an animal, and our ancestors come in that animal to talk to you because it's your totem and that's your guide. And you'll find that your personality is kind of like that totem, a little bit like astrology, but animal, you know, our animal wise. What else? Hang on. I wanted to tell you, one time I was talking to Donnie and I can't speak much language, But one time I was talking to Donnie over the phone, and he spoke to my cat in language, and my cat answered him, and I was standing there floored going, he understood that, and I wish that I could speak language, because I could physically then connect with the animals by speaking language, because I think the vibration of the language is the same vibration, and it moves really smoothly. And also animals, when we enter a place to do ceremony or a special place, often we have to wait for a bird call or the protector, the animal protector of that area to come out and give us the go-ahead to go in there. And if we don't get it, you don't go in. And usually it's a bird, but it can be another animal. It can be something else. Usually it's a bird though.
Wow.
What else have we got? Yeah, animals were made first, by the way. We're the intruders. That's why you should respect them and not push them out of their home trying to build ours.
That explains why animals look at us the way that they do. They do look at us as if to say, hang on a minute, you just, you know, we're like way superior to you people. Especially if it's a cat. A cat can make you feel that just with one look. They certainly haven't forgot their place in the kind of hierarchy, that's for sure. But now, Kev, during the break, you had mentioned to Luna whether we could get into a story that you two had spoken about off air. I think there's dingoes involved. I'm going to hand it over to you guys here, because I'm not sure about this story. So, Kev, set this up for us. Maybe I picked it up wrong during the break, and you can kind of get us into where we're going next.
Well, we were talking about the ability to communicate with animals and what animals will represent when we come into communication with them. And I was sharing the story of the crows with me, and Luna was going into some of the stories of where she has found herself in situations where she may or may not, and she'll be able to explain better than me, not found herself in the same physical representation as you see before you today.
Okay, so come on. What's going on here, Luna?
Okay, I got two stories. One I laid down to go to sleep, but I was never actually asleep, out of body. And the other one, I was physically awake, walking through the bush, singing it at the top of my lungs. So I'll tell you the first one with the dingo body. I was up in the rainforest, and then we've got a sacred mountain here called Razorback Mountain, and its name is Act because it's very sharp at the top. And I figure spirit knowing I'd never climb it. I went to sleep that night, and where I was staying, you could see the mountain from the lounge room window, and we're sleeping in the lounge room. I went to sleep. All of a sudden, I had my nose next to the dirt, and I'm thinking, why is my face on the dirt? And I could smell the dirt. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? And as I looked up, I could see in front of me legs of other dingoes walking in front of me up this dirt track up a mountain. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me that I was in a dingo's body, and they were walking in a pack up to the top of this mountain. And they, or Creator and them together, blessed me with the experience of being on that mountain in the night time. So that was really nice. And I could smell the dirt. I could feel the paws. I could feel my wet nose. I felt I was the dog.
Is this something that's a common trait, a common experience for your people, Luna?
In the old days, yeah, you got to remember a lot of people nowadays just live normal. Right, in the old days, yes, they would go into a bird, say, to have a look somewhere or see what's going on. That brings us to the paintings from the air. Or I wanted to get some proper traditional paintings, because they're all maps from the air. And that brings back to what NeSe said. We've had to be in the air, and there's only two ways we can be in the air. Because we didn't have aeroplanes, and one was through an animal's eyes, and the other one was in spirit or visitors. So we got in the air, and the paintings are their maps, and those paintings we're not allowed to duplicate. only the people that had permission to do those paintings are allowed to, and they're the ones that are done from the air. They're usually desert paintings and that. Well, and on another show, I'll try and compile some.
That's like, I mean, you think about that though, Luna, that's like highly sacred, right? I mean, you've got somebody that's gone and seen through the eyes of a bird, that they've then produced this map, this information. Wow. Just wow. And that lines up so well with what Kevin was talking about earlier on, right? Where you see through the eyes of the bird.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially if it's your totem, you can connect with your totem very easily. Every individual can. That's what your totems are for. And the other story was black cockies. We got black cockies here. You've seen the white ones. Everyone knows the white cockies. We got black ones, and they're really, really big. And I'm only a little woman, so they come up past my knees, nearly up to my hips. Just past my knees, between my knee and my hip and my thigh area. So they're big, large birds. So this particular day, I'm just walking through the bush, singing to Creator, singing off my head, zoned totally out to everything. I was in my own world. I'm walking along, and I'm actually making quite a racket. And in the bush, if you make a racket, you can hear everything moving away. Birds fly off, lizards and snakes slither off. You can hear all the smaller animals run away. And so I didn't really think anything would be there. And I walked along, and I come to this little opening with a big tree, and I walk straight near the tree, and I'm standing there, and I'm looking around me, and I'm thinking, what are these big black things? And then I realised, oh, they're black cockatoos. And I was standing in the middle of a mob of black cockatoos. It was like I was invisible, and they didn't even know I was there. And I'm standing there, and I'm just rejoicing in this moment, thinking how wonderful this is. And then all of a sudden my human consciousness jumped forward and went, I'm standing in the middle of the mob of cockatoos. And they all went, ah, and flew away. And that was the end of that.
Kevin, what are you making of this, man?
It taught me the different places in yourself. Because I was in that quiet place in myself. I was so quiet, I was invisible. And then I went to the ordinary part of myself, which is visible, and that's the part where animals are scared of us. So that was a good lesson. So it is possible, people.
Wow.
And once we spoke to animals like I'm speaking to you. And birds can speak our language, but we can't speak them, because cockies can say, how you going? And, stuff like that.
Well, before we get to the break, I'm gonna try and ask you something. I say try because you don't have to answer if you don't need to. But you mentioned the way they would get the maps. With one technique, you'd look through the eyes of the animal, the bird. But not for the first time today. You've mentioned the kind of the other ones. Call them the aliens, call them Sky Brothers family. I don't know what you want to call them. But you mentioned a mountain as well. How big a part do these visitors play in the Aboriginal story?
Well, remember how I said we've got Creator and the Mother, and we've got Creator beings?
Yep.
Right? These Creator beings, they're our Creator beings.
Okay.
And there was a time where upon the earth there was nothing, and they dreamed trees. They helped bring things into existence. They worked with Creator. That's what they're called, Creator beings. So Creator made them obviously to help him out.
Pretty cool.
And, and we know, the saying, from the stars we come, to the stars we shall return. Because we believe that stars are spiritual beings, remember?
Yep.
There's heavenly bodies and heavenly souls.
So what does it say to you then, Luna, when you hear me talking about the Great Conjunction? When we've got Saturn, when we've got Saturn and Jupiter about to come within 1 degree of each other. The week before that, we've got a solar eclipse. Just last week we had one of your eclipses. We had a lunar eclipse. So what does this all tell you? I mean, what does all these things in the sky say to you with your information?
All right. So first of all, physically, I don't really pay too much attention at what's going on unless they tap me on the shoulder and go, look at that. But I can feel the energy lining up. I can feel change coming. I can feel all this. So me feeling all this and then talking to NeSe, and some of my sisters are like tapping me on the shoulder, this is coming up, this is coming up. So I actually sat down the other day and had a good look at what was going on. And how would I say it, where they're dancing in communication. They're coming together and they're dancing in communication. They're talking about us and what we're doing. And there's things that need to be finalised before this time's out. And all these signs, the heavenly bodies, that's what it is. What's the other message I got? This has happened before, because there's great cycles that we haven't even seen the whole cycle of, right? And people say it's new, and it's not new, it's just cycles. And our lifespan doesn't see most of the whole cycle. So we're fortunate enough to see this cycle. And if you have a look at the patterns of the planets when they're lining up in the next, week or so, you can actually see symbols, what are used in symbology, if you have a good look. That's what I noticed when I actually took the time to go and have a look. I went, oh, I've noticed that symbol and that symbol. So they're Northern Hemisphere symbols. For us mob down here, it's a little different, because the solstice and the lineup, we actually don't have four seasons. We have 8 seasons. So it doesn't really match proper with us, but we still are aware of what's going on. And the one that's coming up, what I want to know is all the other cycles. There were people that knew that this was coming around, so they would help govern that energy that hit the earth. Today, no one's doing it, and the ones that aren't the nice ones, and we need to pay more attention, because we need to receive that energy that's coming down and use it for our good needs, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it makes brilliant sense. And NeSe, now we're talking your language, right? The planets coming together, the alignments, the cycle of the cycles. What do you want to add to this before we go to the break, Kev? And then I'll let you take it after the break, brother.
Well, as today is the initiation of my winter solstice fast, so in accordance to some of the ceremonies and ritual I've been passed down, that our people would take these opportunities to do fasting, to take a moment and let the physical body go through what it goes through, so the spiritual, mental, and other parts of our entity can go through these things. And so it is critical in the aspects of, you never plan to fail, you only fail to plan. And if you take this opportunity to plan, you can use the cycles to use it as a starting point.
Haggis for breakfast. Now there's a thought. And even as a devoutly staunch nationalistic toxic Scotsman, never have I considered having haggis for breakfast, but maybe I will now. And that's because I've got NeSe here with me, and he suggests the most unlikely of breakfasts. And we've also got Luna from Down Under. Now this is going to be just one show that is not going to be standalone, because I've done shows with Luna and Donnie and Jess and Ken in the past, and we're also planning on bringing more people in and getting that gang back together in the near future, the closer we get to the Great Conjunction. So for the audience out there, I don't know if it's been the same for you as it has been for me, Luna and Kevin, but this has gone by so quickly. And it's been so hard to even get 1% of the stuff that I know Luna probably wants to talk about, that Kev would love to get out there, that Kev and Luna would love to share, and the stuff that I want to ask them as well. So the reason I bring it up is because don't panic, don't fear. And we're all pretty close over there on Disco. we can come together in the blink of an eyeball. Yes, that's how quick it takes to organize one of these shows. So don't worry, folks, there's going to be more where this information came from. Because I know I like a laugh and I like a joke, and that's part of who I am. But the serious side of me, I can't emphasize enough the importance, at least I think the importance, of having NeSe, having Luna, having Donnie, having all these various other people to come in and share their knowledge, their information that takes us back to the ancient world, in a time when we were all interconnected, a time where we all were more in harmony with the world around us. And here we are, 2020, culminating in all of these strange events going on in the sky. Now, I would love to know what all of it means. I would love to know the science behind what Mercury retrograde has in relation to making our technology go mad. But just because I don't understand it doesn't mean that I discount it. And we touched upon this earlier on, but we don't do coincidences. And it's just kind of crazy when you think about how much time we've been made to spend indoors this year compared to other years. And all of these potential energies that may be coming into this planet. And every single organism on the planet right now, be it human, be it animal, be it plant, maybe we're going through one of these natural cosmic upgrades. Maybe the pendulum's about to go from the disconnected back to what Luna and what Kevin were talking about. Maybe that Wi-Fi, call it the pineal gland, call it the bush telegraph, entanglement, whatever it is, maybe that dial's about to switch back on. Maybe we are about to be reconnected at a time when they're doing their best to disconnect everyone and plug us into their artificial cosmic superhighway, one that they do surveil, one that literally they do know every thought you have. I don't know, maybe it is just a coincidence that it's all happening at this time, but I'm going to come back to Kevin, I'm going to come back to Luna, because you want to hear from them. So over to you first, Kev. The energies, the alignments, the cycles of the psychos, as you call it. Over to you, man. I'm going to mute up.
Well, one thing that I wanted to share with the Anishinaabe stories or their legends or their myths is that one time they all made a decision that they had to get away from the East Coast and move inland. And when this occurred, it was based upon a vision of someone who was within the tribe. And as this individual shared its vision, the alignments of the vision occurred. And then, lo and behold, in the western sky was a great Megas shell that was seen hovering. And this accorded part of the vision to follow the Megas shell. And so from the East Coast, a large representation of the Anishinaabe people moved inland to follow the Megas shell on 7, that wonderful number, 7 separate stops until they came to the place where they would find the food that grows on the water. And this is what we call monomen or wild rice. And this is in the Minnesota area, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And so they follow this great Megas shell in the sky to head west. And then as you learn through going through what we call the Meday Lodge, which is kind of like the historical entities of the Anishinaabe people are of the Meday people. This is where medicines are passed upon and rituals shared and kept, but they have birch bark scrolls where they would etch into the scrolls from the great copper scrolls, because my people would smelt copper, pound it out, because they knew if it got hot enough, they could pound it and stretch it, and then they would etch pictographs or iconography or symbolism on these copper scrolls, and then they would copy them on birch bark scrolls, because when birch bark got wet, it would lay out flat, and when it dried, it would roll up into like a scroll, which is a lot lighter to carry around to share from village to village than it is to lug around a big copper scroll. But who knows, the Smithsonian somewhere deep in the vaults where they took a lot of our artifacts.
Good point, brother. Good point. Luna, anything you want to add to that?
Wow. Wow.
You know it's wow when I don't. You know it's wow when I don't interrupt people. You know it's like whoa. Yeah.
Yeah, we had message sticks. As I said, they were messages on a little stick. We had messages in trees. We didn't really have script writings like that on bark. We used our bark for making coolamons, containers, and canoes. That's amazing.
Well, we did the same thing. If you look at the birch bark, it's incredible to realize that you can boil or heat up water in a birch bark container over a fire. And I had a hard time accepting that, but because of the way of the absorbency of the birch bark, that after so many layers, it is solid where there is no water saturation through it. But because of the fire on the outside where it meets the bark being wet, it won't burn through. And they had a certain container where they would bend it and stitch it, and they would use it to heat water over a fire.
Wow. Yeah, we didn't heat our water, but we had similar things, wetting the bark and heating it over the fire to shape it. But we actually use different kinds of bark for different things. One of our barks is actually a medicine, paper bark, and we use that's like a sacred bark. And we can use it as medicine. We use it in our ceremonies. What else? Wrapping up our wounds because it draws out fluid from a swollen wound. Wow, this is amazing. How long's the show going for?
We're looking at the time here. Yeah, we've got 21 minutes left now. What I'm going to do is, I wish we had 2 hours and 21 left. I'm going to ask you quickly then about the Great Conjunction again. What of your sisters? I mean, when you've been talking to your friends, Luna, is this something that you are looking towards? Is it just something that, yeah, it's significant, but nothing to really pay too much attention to? How would you approach this?
Well, we were saying that all the other ones, because there's been others, right? We didn't really pay attention to them. You know, like, it's, another cycle's going by, just be aware of it. But this one's different because this one hasn't happened for 500 years or something. Long time.
Yeah.
And which means for us, way before settlement came here. So for us, it's more significant because the last one was when we weren't occupied. So,
you know, I hadn't thought about that. That's a very significant point. I think it was the 1500s or 1600s. The last time they were this close together.
Yes, I think it was 1500s, yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way, Luna. Yeah.
We weren't occupied, so it's different, and we can feel it, Kev. We can feel it. It's an important one, and like you said before, given what's happening, and it's coupling at the same exact time, which is so amazing. Like, they planned that out or what? And it's very important for everyone to be aware. When that energy comes, try and be open, clear and loving, because they're going to try and put fear out when it happens. Because I think it happens, what, the 21st?
21st of December, yeah. Now, on the solstice, Luna, you mentioned 8 seasons down there, which is fascinating. But Kevin, he talks about the winter and summer solstice. Over here, we got all the people going and running around Stonehenge with their chicken feet and doing the druid thing down there. We've got Clava Cairns, the one in Scotland, the one that Jess loves from the Outlander show. She can't get enough of that one. So what do the Aboriginal people make of the summer and winter solstice? Is this a big ceremonial time?
Well, like I said, we actually have like 8 seasons. So we've got the normal 4, but we've got ones in between because our climate is a lot different, as everyone knows, to most. Even though it's hot, it's different to all the other hot countries in the world too. I've met people from overseas come here and go, oh, I don't know how you can live here, it's so hot. And I'm thinking, what? So we have the 8 seasons, which would, matching up to the northern hemisphere, it won't quite match. And I haven't quite looked into the nitty-gritty of the 8 season and how much it would put things out. Because from what I've studied, no one knows exactly the exact moment. I don't think there is an exact moment. Maybe it's over a period of time. It's something I'm going to have to look more into. All I know is that this one's important, the fact that it hasn't happened for so long, and the infinity symbol has something to do with it as well. Remember how I said if you look at the planets lining up, you'll match symbols, and the infinity symbol is what's coming in. Also, if you look at old books from 1500s, they drew pictures of sky activity. And I think we should look at that and match it up with what's happening now, because I've got a feeling that they saw that back then. That was the cycle that we missed out on because we're not old enough. We don't live long enough to see. And as far as our mob goes, they would have went up to special mountain, again, mountains, special mountain place and done certain ceremonies. And I'd say to govern the energy as it comes down, to make sure that it reaches the earth in a good way.
Yeah, that's one thing because I've been thinking about this as well, Kev. You can guarantee all these creepier covens and groups and cults and people that use ceremony and ritual. You can just imagine what kind of bang for their buck they're going to be trying to achieve when you've got these planetary movements on the go, right? Wouldn't you agree, Kev?
Oh, absolutely. And I was talking to Luna about this the other day where, you know, her being in the southern hemisphere and me and you, Kev, being in the northern hemisphere. In the northern hemisphere, we are on the precipice of the shortest day period, and Luna is about to go to the longest day period because she's in the southern hemisphere. And so I asked her, and I'm putting you on the spot, Luna, if you did that opportunity, I said, could you calculate with your sunrise and your sunset, because my estimation is she is roughly almost at a full 16 hours of daylight, as we in the northern hemisphere are almost on an 8-hour length of daylight, yet 16 hours of night.
Right. Yeah, I had a quick look at that from what I could understand because I was looking at this funny white fella map. Yeah, right now is our longest. The sun comes up really, really early and sets the latest, and I think it's about 14 hours from what I did have a look at. Here we don't really worry because we know summer comes and we've got long days anyway, and then they do the daylight saving thing, which makes the sun doesn't go down to like 8:30.
Do you do that over there as well? Have you got that stupid
we're in it
thing?
now.
Yeah.
Otherwise you'd be on too early. I'd have to get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy.
It is. It's madness. And trying to sync it all up, that's why trying to sync up the summer solstice on its exact point was really hard, because we got to allow for daylight saving. Then we got to allow for the fact that our summer is slightly different to the northern hemisphere summer, and we have longer days naturally. So I had to find the longest day out of all of them, and it's kind of now. It's over a span of a week. It's not actually just one day. I noticed that it spans out. It's like anything celestial. It comes to a point and then wavers off. And I found that the solstice is the same. It builds up to a point and then wavers off.
Well, isn't it incredible of how the powers that should not be can utilize daylight savings or the Gregorian calendar system to keep us off sync with the most natural cycle that there is, Mother Earth and the moon. That's the Mother Earth in herself is the first cycle, and then the next hugest body is the moon. So, and especially with the fact that we are such a large percentage of water, and we know how the Luna affects all of us with our water, so why would we not pay closer attention to that? And even greater, why would there be a group of individuals that do not want us synchronizing with these cycles?
I think we're about to come out like a butterfly and they don't want us to.
That's a very good way of looking at it. I like that. I do like that. A metamorphosis of sorts is taking place. I've always said we'd get an upgrade sooner or later. I think it's all the same thing that we're talking about here. Whether it's the butterfly, the metamorphosis, the upgrade. We're going to get special superpowers. Luna's already talked about some of them. The Bush Telegraph. I think more and more of us are going to become telepathic. I think frighteningly, more and more of us might even develop little powers of being kinetically telepathic, being able to move things with our mind. What? I know it sounds weird, but I think these ancient cycles, some were periods of high connection, and others would have been periods of very minimal connection. Connection to
Depending
source.
on your PPP.
Yeah, connection to source, connection to creator. Call it the Dark Ages versus the Renaissance. We have these ebbs and flows. And I think when we look at the recent history, even beyond that of which we've just lived ourselves, and we're going through times like nobody's lived before, ever, that we know of. I think we could all argue that this has definitely been one of the darker periods. But the only good thing is every dark period is followed by light. And I hope that we're about to go into one of those positive, light, uplifting kind of periods. And maybe that's why there's such a push to get everything done as quickly as possible so they can combat what is coming organically. Now, Kev, I'm going to get really quickly from you because then I've got a quick story from Luna. I don't even know if we'll manage to sneak it in there in the time, but on you go, Kev.
Well, I was just going to bring up one of the fears that I have when I do these rituals and ceremonies, when I purposely try to tune into these greater cycles, the metaphysical occurrences or the paranormal occurrences, they happen in a greater of abundance. And it literally scares me sometimes because, as we were talking earlier, with the synchronization, where like today, Kev, when you gave me a call, not 2-3 minutes prior to you calling me, I was thinking about you.
That's right.
And then lo and behold, I get that phone call. And so it is pertinent that we take this observation to rectify or to realize where we literally are here together as this community, trying to be that light in the darkness.
Very well said. Now, Luna, I don't even know if we've got time for your little story. But it's a feel-good story, but it was about one of your friends that you had unfortunately lost when you were younger. But it had such a positive kind of long-term story. Can you kind of share it with the audience before we go?
Yep, I'll do it quick. Okay, so I had a friend, he was actually a male, he was a Scottish man. He was spiritual, he was a Pik. I don't know if anyone knows what the Piks are, but that's his heritage, his spiritual heritage. He knew about the gathering and everything. We were very close, and he passed away. Before he passed away, we were having a conversation. I laughed and said, "Hi, you're going to be born as a girl." Anyway, his daughter was younger, and I was like an auntie to her, and we kind of lost contact after he passed away. And then one day I was at the shopping centre, and then she was there, and she'd had a little girl. And this little girl was only about 4 or 5 years old. And to me, I was a stranger to her. And I saw the lady and I went, "Oh, hello, so good to see you." And before we could even walk to meet each other, the little girl ran up to me, hugged onto my leg and wouldn't let go. Anyway, we said goodbye. And about 15 years later, I got a phone call on my phone, our work phone, because we do spiritual work, and the phone call went like this: "Hello, is this Anne-Marie?" "Yes." "You don't really know me, but I'm so-and-so's daughter, so-and-so's granddaughter. And I'm like, oh, okay. She said, I need to talk to you. I said, okay. So she came over. And we went out the back, just me and her, and she smoked like a chimney. And I'm thinking, your granddad smoked like a chimney, man. And she smoked like a chimney. And I looked at her and I went, oh my God, it's you. But I wasn't allowed to say anything. I recognised that it was him being born into a girl's body this time, but I wasn't allowed to say nothing. So I'm sitting out the back being real nervous, waiting for her to tell me who she is. She turns around and she looks at me and she goes, hey, it's me. And I went, oh. But now it's weird because she's a girl and she's younger than me. And we have these weird conversations.
Excuse me, it's ma'am.
Yep, exactly. I remember when you told us that story when you were on the show before, and there's something really profound about that. There's something very comforting about it as well, especially for people that might have lost somebody. It's certainly not the end. That's for sure. We might be at the end of the show, but nothing ever comes to an end properly, right? It's all cycles within cycles, and chances are, Luna, Kevin, we've done this all before, and that terrifies me more than anything. So, Luna, your last thoughts for the audience before we wrap this up for the day. And thank you so much for coming on so early.
That's all right, thank you. Last thoughts. One, find out who your traditional people are and get into contact with your own culture. Other than that, it's time that we all used our bush telephone and started joining together and being the people that Creator intended us to be, and walk gently on the mother and love to you on this day.
I love it. I love it. Kevin, over to you, man.
Well, we are particulates of a star, and you are all the delight in my darkness. Please recognize that miraculous perfection of unique individualism. And if you need validation of what a miracle you are, just find the closest mirror. And thank you, Luna, for joining us on such a short message or notice. And thank you, Kevin, for this opportunity.
Well, this has been a nice warm-up for when we get the full tribe together. And we'll get Donnie back. And a big shout-out to Donnie as well. I know he's not been keeping too well. There's a weird connection with me and Donnie. Luna, I don't know if you can help me with it. I don't even... you can? See, that's even weird.
That's men's business.
It's definitely men's business, but I tell you what, it's so weird. It's like... can't even put into words. It's like you know somebody, but you don't know them. It's weird, Luna. Just weird.
Kev, you can ask any black fella here. There's this uncanny connection between the Scottish and the Irish.
Oh, big time.
We're hooked up somewhere in the past, and that connection is still alive today. And I'm trying to find out exactly what it is. And we've covered things like that, and we know about the red-headed people and that, but I know there's more to it. There's some really cool, significant thing, and hopefully we can find out what it is.
Yeah, I hope we can definitely delve deeper into that, because I think there is, even when Australian people come over to Scotland to work for the summer and people go the other way, it's like it's the most natural coming together of two different peoples that you can get. Just so similar in character. Work ethic, just everything that it's so compatible, and that must come from somewhere, right? So folks, we are almost out of time. Coming up later on in the week, I have got Derek Gilbert coming onto the show. That is going to be awesome. And then the show I haven't been able to stop talking about, Neil Sanders is going to be here on Friday, and he's going to explain to all of us what happened to the alternative media. How did a group of people that were so against the left-right paradigm, how did so many get pulled right back into the left-right paradigm? All will be revealed on Thursday, folks. Oh, it's going to be a good one. And wherever you are, make it TFR. Always, always respect our Mother Earth. And I'm loving getting more information from NeSe, from Luna, because in the end of the day, it's that information we provide to you, so you can decide. Wherever you are, make it TFR and then touch that dial.
you.